I am Asna Mubashra, currently working as Assistant Professor of Textile Design at College of Art and Design, University of the Punjab, Lahore, Pakistan. I congratulate organizers, participants, and audience of this 15th International Conference on Design Principles and Practices. This has emerged as an ideal platform for exchange of latest research and development. My discussion today will be about user-centered design conceptualization of upper body clothing for female hemiplegia patients. This is the roadmap of my discussion. The division of milestones is to facilitate the understanding of this paper. My discussion will comprise of two parts. First part is about development of a conceptual framework regarding suggested topic. The second part is about my academic research project focusing on the path of activities that I followed to conduct a formal research. Clothing is one of the essential human needs and is a subject of universal interest. This subject has a multidimensional approach. Ever increasing dimensions have brought into limelight the strong contributions of this subject in exploring probabilities of designing to serve a specific purpose, the functional aspect of clothing. Expressing with clothing is the right that everybody has. Adaptive clothing is a clothing design concept that helps to minimize joint movements performed by patients and decreases the amount of patient handling performed by attendants. The outcome is reduction in pain and discomfort for both attendants and patient. Clothing problems which arise from a medical situation need knowledge of this medical situation along with awareness of physical limitations and problems faced in everyday life by such patients. It is required to develop such solutions which combine fashion and function. Whatever the type of disability with which a person is affected, the surrounding environment can either positively or adversely affect quality of life. Clothing is an important aspect of the human constructed environment surrounding an individual and therefore has bearing on quality of life. Clothing is required for three reasons: protection, comfort, and dignity. People who are affected might be differently able, but they need clothing for the same reasons. Making the most for a user's convenience is a step towards self reliance and a feeling of acceptance and belongingness. It is important for the contemporary designers to explore this avenue to bring into limelight the special structural requirements of clothing in living environment. By doing so, they will be able to suggest solutions for this segment of society to substantially improve their quality of life. There are several essentials that adaptive clothing designs must have. Schematic representation of the factors affecting adaptive clothing is shown here. Successful adaptive designs consolidate all these factors. In socio-psychological aspect, adaptive clothing can provide immense boost among the individuals with special needs. In aesthetic aspect, it should be attractive and fashionable. In management aspect, wear and tear problem should be solved. In economical aspect, it should be within the reasonable price range so that individuals with special needs can afford. In physical aspect, comfort and ease must be considered to make dressing easier and less painful and frustrating. The dignity of the patient is important consideration as it is essential that the adaptive clothing should not make the patients feel institutionalized or embarrassed in any way. The individual requirements of such people regarding clothing are much more diverse than for people with normal conditions. These specific needs and preferences of clothing dictate the performance requirements of adapted garments. Disability as a concept is very difficult to define or measure, specifically due to the diverse nature of its various manifestations in the human body. Therefore, conceptual clarity is fundamental for the development of a working theoretical base for clothing research. The definitions appear to imply that disability begins with an effect at the organ level, then at the body level, expands to affect broad aspects of human performance, and finally impacts an individual's interaction with the society. Physical disability affects the type of clothing that can be worn. Due to the numerous variation of physical challenges, identifying a framework within which such unique clothing issues might be clearly defined and organized is a complex but necessary process. One significant effect of disability is to restrict or impede mobility. Body mobility is a complex chain of events involving the nervous, muscular, and skeletal systems which work together to produce movement in various parts of the body. Clothing must work with the body movements during the course of a day, expanding and contracting in a similar way as the body. The problem of finding suitable clothing for individuals with physical disabilities has been a topic of concern for clothing, medical, and rehabilitation researchers for over half a century. Beginning in the 1940s, clothing and medical professionals started to examine the relationship between clothing and physical disability. The bulk of this research resulted in publication of various self-help guides for the handicapped and their caregivers, designed primarily to ease daily tasks. Subsequent research in the later part of 20th century explored the psychological issues of functional clothing, primarily by assessing the importance of clothing as an appearance management tool. In the late 19th century, psychologists, sociologists, and anthropologists engaged in the study of the social significance of clothing. A concise and distinct classification system is needed to help clothing designers systematically group physical limitations into manageable and mutually exclusive segments. Systems have been developed to address the clothing needs of the population and to guide and organization research in this area. Reich and Shannon in 1980 proposed a simple system based on empirical data. The researchers developed a grouping of six common physical limitations across disabilities that would help address the clothing needs of a physically handicapped population. The six groups were lower leg, lower torso, upper torso, hand, arm, and neck. Another possibility of classifying disability for use with clothing research is presented by the enabler system. It defines disability as combinations of limitations in various parts of body. This system has been in existence since 1970s for use in ergonomic design, architectural design, product design, and for clothing. The purpose of the enabler is to simplify medical aspects of disability and make them more comprehensible to the designers. The enabler system is an effective way of defining these nine specific limitations within the body. After discussing the conceptual framework regarding perception of adaptive clothing and reviewing the existing research literature, now I will move on to the second part of this presentation. It is about the series of formal steps taken to complete the academic research project of need assessment, designing, and effectiveness of upper body adaptive clothing for female hemiplegia patients. The purpose of this study was to understand and explore deeply the possibilities of making suitable upper body clothing for women suffering from hemiplegia. It affects people in different degrees. Changes and limitations due to this are pronounced for special needs. In this situation, especially the act of getting dressed is very painful. A mixed method of inquiry was adopted for conducting this case study research. Instead of methods being important, the problem was most important, and researchers used different approaches to understand the problem. The study followed a linear progression of data collection and analysis. The methods employed for research included interviews with medical specialists, observations and in-depth interviews of the patients. The needs expressed by the patients were the basic criteria for designing of adaptive clothing ideas of this study. Intent of the study was also to suggest solutions that can bring a change in the quality of life of the participants. For that, an intervention was planned to determine effectiveness of one proposed solution. People suffering from physical limitation due to hemiplegia, no less than the rest of us, desire good design in the clothes they wear. The selection of clothing is largely a problem based on particular needs and preferences. These needs are not met by traditional clothing. Ethics dictate that the needs of such people should also be realized in order to provide opportunities of a better life for them, and efforts are required to make their daily lives as comfortable as possible. Researchers are needed to provide solutions for such special needs in local contexts. Outcomes of such studies can become a baseline for future functional dress designers and medical professionals who wish to serve this segment. Additionally, such studies can become base for marketing of a new product line. Adaptive clothing designs are equally useful for anyone with limited mobility, ones who need care due to problems of weight bearing or limitation of dexterity. The specific objectives drawn at this stage included identification of areas of clothing that require adaptation, suggestions for adaptive clothing designs, evaluation of effectiveness of the adaptive clothing. These drawn objectives led to the formulation of relevant research questions. Here is the list of the instruments which were used to gather data for the study. This table shows a complete listing of instruments used in each stage and their function. The research study was divided into three phases. Phase 1 focused on gathering data from participants to provide the necessary information for need assessment of this specific group of users of adaptive clothing. The data gave the researcher expanded information into the particular nature of each participant's problem, which supported Objective 1. Phase 2 focused on co-designing of adaptive clothing. The information obtained from study participants in Phase 1 suggested a guideline for sketching adaptive clothing designs which were most suitable for the specific needs assessed. The designing phase was also interactive, and participants were asked to make their opinion while the sketches were in initial stage. Information produced from each participant's interview was analyzed. The ideas given by all participants were consolidated into three complete sketches of adaptive clothing designs. Standard pattern blocks were manipulated by the researcher to achieve the adapted style. The co-designing phase ended with the construction of the three sets of same trial adaptive garment made in three different materials of same in required sizes of each participant. Phase 3 aimed at wear testing of one trial adaptive garment for 3 weeks. Wear testing of the trial adaptive garment took place with same group of participants, and information was collected about their experience after 3 weeks of use. Participants rated different clothing problems. This phase concluded with interview questions relating to overall relief felt by the participants. These are the images of selected adaptive design chosen for construction. These are the findings of research question 1 regarding need assessment. Specific physical limitations that were common to this group of adult female patients of hemiplegia were grouped into categories of restricted range of motion, motor incoordination, lack of strength, decreased sensation, and stamina. All categories impacted both the wearing of clothing and styling of clothing. The clinical definition of a disease appeared to be consistent to the identification of physical limitation categories. All participants wanted to find clothing that was easy to move in, easy to dress or undress and fasten, and which maintained a suitable appearance. As one participant stated, women with physical disability want clothing that does not set them apart from others. Findings of research question 2 were proposing solutions. Using a co-design technique, the researcher established common clothing features preferred among participants, which were put into a trial adaptive clothing solution. These included a loose, unfitted shape, no defined waistline area, a front or side opening, diagonal buttonholes and large-sized buttons, a simple basic neckline with no collar, a raglan or deep satin sleeve. With the accepted linkage between disability and limitations, these features were also applicable for adaptive clothing of populations with a range of physical disabilities. Finding of research question 3 were regarding effectiveness of proposed solution. The selected features were incorporated into an adaptive clothing garment produced as a trial adaptive solution. Wear test evaluations by participants had demonstrated that appeal and functionality was maintained. Rating of the trial adaptive garment set in all clothing dimensions were generally good. The participating women in the evaluation stage exclaimed that provided trial garment was just as they envisioned, rather better than they envisioned. Concluding the discussion, I will state that by understanding and recognizing the need of this specific segment of our society, the specially engineered adaptive clothing design solutions can help them to obtain the quality of life, maintain the dignity, and make the tasks of dressing easier. Better appearance through improvement of clothing can help these people to believe that they have worth in the sight of others and in their own view. Such patients make the access to the world a little easier by provision of such solutions. I will finish my discussion stating that the feeling of self confidence, the sense of well being, and of social acceptance that comes from wearing of clothing which is functional, appropriate, and attractive is important to all people, but to those with special needs, it becomes much more important. I, Asna Mubashra from University of the Punjab, Lahore, Pakistan, thank you all for patiently listening to this discussion. Thank you.